Standard Time. If no other reason, you could tune in just to hear what the time is. And with that said, this is Hour of Empower, LinkedIn Live. The word of the day is relationships, and that pretty much is universal where it applies to about everything and anything that you're involved with. So proud and honored to have Kelly with us on our Tuesday, starts with a T, and Jill with a Y, who was scheduled last week, but we rescheduled because of technical issues. And I'm so happy to have Jill. She's an amazing person, got an amazing background. I would definitely check out profiles and reach out if there's alignment in some way, just to get to know each other better. Like I say, the word of the day is relationships. I'll turn it over to Kelly, and then we'll turn it over to Jill, and then we'll go round robin, and then acknowledge all these wonderful people coming today. With that, Kelly, so happy to have you.
Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from on this Tuesday morning. And the word relationship, of course, it's always a great word. I was just thinking, there are so many relationships, right? We've got business relationships, we have personal relationships, relationship with faith. However, but I was like, wow, they all really go back to the basic core of trust. And regardless of what it is, but of course, being on LinkedIn, it's difficult not to lean towards business and those relationships and how they are based on trust. And unfortunately, the other side of that is when you don't have trust in how the relationship, operates dysfunctionally, if you will. And it's the perfect word today because Jill is someone I personally have had a relationship with for, over 15 years for sure. We've met through charity work actually here in Phoenix, Scottsdale area, which is great. So I'm so grateful to have Jill here with us today. And to give Jill some more time, I'll toss it over to you, Jill, do a little introduction of you and then talk about what your first thoughts are about relationship. And welcome, my friend.
Thank you. And yes, our relationship 15 years back, it's just so fun to reconnect back on LinkedIn, and saw a comment and said, I got to catch up. What the heck is she doing, girl? Anyway, so I'm grateful to be here. And when I thought of relationships, I always think mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. What does that look like in relationships? So then I started meditating on my own relationships and where I wanted them to go and what was important. And another really big relationship is family. We have so many different kinds of relationship with our families, our siblings, our parents. They're gone. Where are they at? Elderly parents. And what does that look like? Another one, like you said, of course, Kelly, is friendships. And then we've got the fun romantic one, which is one of my favorites. So we're going to have to really have some fun talking about relationships because it's so wide open. I love it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, that's a great lift off to a wonderful discussion on relationships, because it's so important to remember where we started from, because that was what you brought to the word. Now, what can we add to it to make it even more bountiful and applicable in the most positive ways? And I think every word we ever come up with, the base is really yourself, which is, what's the relationship with yourself? Do you wake up every morning excited to see yourself again? Do you get excited by what you could do, the possibilities, what other people may come into your life, ideas, opportunities? I think that's the key, because once you get good with yourself, it's easier to get better with other people, because everything is contagious. It just takes a while longer to see full circle in most cases. And it's nice to know you can create relationships, that you can be proactive. While you're waiting, you could be creating, and I don't wait for anybody because I can't. And I don't expect people to wait for me.
Let's wait for.
Well, Well, and I think that's the thing is once you get control of your relationship with yourself,
Yeah.
it makes it a lot easier to deal with everybody else because of your confident, strong, courageous, brave, bold. I mean, that's how I'd mix my cereal up every day, is put as many flavors and things and make it special. And I think life is special. And I think people should treat it, especially their own life, you know? So, anyways, with that, before I turn it over to Kelly, let me just go through the audience. So grateful for you to be here. Without you, no show. And really, our conversation would get limited instead of being expansive. So thank you again. Danny's here. Danny's just a great guy out in England, a friend of Harvey's. I made it back after a manic week. Hope everybody's cool and calculated through this. Dennis says, hopefully we can all relate starting at this date and we won't be late. Well, that's Dennis, our poet laureate. Familiar is an important part of family. So right. Well, with a good laugh like that, Kelly, what's the next dimension of relationship?
Yeah, well, I think, what you brought up, such a great point. The relationship with ourself. I mean, it's one of the things that my parents always told me growing up, and it's a gauge that I still use to this day, was always if I wanted to see where I was at, or was to look at the people that I was surrounding myself with, because that was a reflection of me. And probably when I was young, I didn't truly understand what they were saying. But looking back, it's very obvious, even those friends that my mom would be like, you're not allowed to play with such and such. And I was like, why not? And I look back as an adult and I'm like, totally get why my mom didn't want me playing with her or him, whoever it was. But the reflection of yourself and taking that moment to be like, wow, I'm either in a really great place. I'm very blessed that I can look around my inner circle and go, wow, I've done something right in my life, and surrounded myself with some pretty incredible people. And that does come from personal growth and having that relationship with self and putting self first, and paying attention to those things. And even here, the chosen family, picking, we have no choice on who our family is. And, like Jill alluded to, our relationships with each person within our family is very different. But then we have those people in our lives that come along and they're what I would refer to as chosen family, and are like family members. And what a blessing that is. And to extend onto LinkedIn and here with community, I think all relationships, including with ourselves, go back to that basic thing of community, of feeling safe, secure, and love. And when we feel all those things with our relationship, that exudes from us. I mean, it's not something you can hide. I think when we see people like, wow, what is going on? They're just glowing or whatever it is, because they're in a great place with themselves. Something is, they're happy and connected, and it's beautiful. But I do think here, again, to go back to community a little bit with that relationship here, and what you've created and what everybody else around here has created, is also a relationship. Networking is a relationship. It just depends on how you choose to network. Do I want it to be meaningful, or do I just want it to be surface because I'm looking for a vanity number that makes me feel better about myself? Which I know this year for me has been more of a focus on meaningful connection and relationship. Like, let's bypass all this, the canned emails in our inboxes, and let's get to knowing one another and how can we help each other, or how can I help you? And others leaving their agendas at the door. I mean, that's what I love about this community and the relationships here, is knowing when I get a connection request from someone or saying, hey, you really need to connect with this person. It's pre-vetted because I know they're from here and they've either heard, seen me, had a conversation themselves. And that's a relationship, is sharing part of you and wanting you to do better. And I think that's an important factor with any relationship, is wanting someone to be a better version of themselves and not being in competition with who you are. I think that's another layer of our self reflection relationship, however you want to view that part of it. What are your thoughts on that, Jill?
I love that. So I always was told when you look in the mirror, you bring in a relationship, you're mirroring where you're at that time.
Yeah.
And so when I get into a relationship or I meet someone that's, like, ouch, I think, okay. And I start self-reflecting and saying, okay, why are you putting this out? What's happening? And my best relationships are when I'm happy, and I'm very fortunate. So I wake up happy every day because all three of us are really excited about life. But I'd love to bring a new element into relationships, and that's online relationships today.
Yeah.
The Match.com, all the Tinder, the this, the that. I started a pickleball dating app for relationships in the pickleball world. And my own personal story, which is so fun, which I was sharing, was I had been divorced for 18 years, or I've been divorced for 18 years. And I always thought, I don't want a site. I want to meet the person on something I love to do. So whether that's hiking, whether that's pickleball, whether I like to walk, I like animals or dogs, and I'm dog park, or what is it that you're surrounding yourself to make it so that relationship you develop is something that you like, that you already have a common means, a common ground. When I used to meet people, I didn't say I'm going for coffee. I said, let's go for a hike, because you get me for an hour and a half and we talk. We really talk versus sitting there over a glass of wine or a cup of coffee. So one of my friends, when I was playing pickleball one night, says to me, and he was 65 years old, he says, Jill, I don't think I could start a relationship with someone unless they play pickleball, because I do it 7 days a week. And I went, I get it. I get that. So let's find common grounds to find people that have things that we like, whether it's a book club, it doesn't matter. And I used to like the meetups, but I more personally am an outdoorsy person. So I'd rather be outdoors and meet them. And because I do a bunch of health and wellness events, I thought, okay, I'm always around healthy people, which is who we want to be around, positive, healthy people. So I thought internet relationships, when I started looking into that, was also fun. And you could take that different ways. Even in my pickleball, they can be a person to play. They can be a relationship, a romance, or they can be what I call my soulmate. So what are we looking for?
Well, and I think sometimes you don't know what you're looking for until you find it also. And I think that's a reason to have more opportunities, more options, be busier, because they say the worst time to go grocery shopping is when you're hungry. Because everything looks like lunch pretty soon. So if you ate a good meal before you went there, you'd only be buying things that you want to eat in the future. When it comes to people, it's the same thing. If you go there without needing something, but looking always for new opportunities, then you don't justify, you don't compare what you don't have to what something, that saying anything is better than nothing is not always true. So if you're going to want something that you won't have to want again, right?
And go out for the fun.
Well, and that's the key, is if that's the only thing that matters, everything else is gravy.
Exactly.
Right? And if people just say, yeah, and that's where communication is so important, is intention. Here's what, right? What's your intention? Are you just happy to take a walk and have some conversation? Or are you in a rush or have something, out front is always better, because sometimes there's no after if the out front isn't very good, right? Nobody likes surprises, good or bad, And the thing is, when you meet somebody, they're a stranger, and when you leave them, they can still be a stranger, So time with someone is not as important, like Kelly says, as relevancy. You know, what do I bring to you, or what do I think I can bring to you? In turn, what can you bring for me? You know,
Yeah.
because you're starting out without that person. To add somebody, I think to Kelly's point, needs to be qualified,
Yeah.
you know, and done in a way that's respectful, but says, hey, I need to know these things up front, right?
Mhm.
Are you going to be honest? Are you, I mean, it's just simple stuff. And I think that's
You
even,
don't know that up front. You know, you've got to get to know someone to be
Yeah.
able to, because you hear all these stories, so to speak,
Oh,
and
good.
you need to take time and then just enjoy and learn the person. And I feel that person, like you're talking about, is the piece of the puzzle that fits really well that you're missing, but you're enjoying. You know, so
yeah, and I think every, you know, I believe that's so true, but I believe you're always stretching too
Yeah.
and finding room for things that fit, or making room to say, hey, for this kind of person, I'll make some accommodations here.
Right.
You know, just like having company, you know, someone's going to come to visit. I got to like straighten up the room and do whatever it is. And I think it's the effort that goes on when you meet somebody
Hmm.
to say, hey, this person's really showing up well today. You know, that they really put some thought into whatever it is that they're doing, or, and you know, how are they treating you when they don't know you? You know, because that's really the true self. You know, if you tell everybody about everything you need them to know, well, you know, they're going to maybe naturally, but relationships is, you should be the chooser, not the one being chosen, right? You should be the one particular in saying, here's what I'm looking for. I mean, just like if you went in and ordered a meal, you know, you'd know what you were expecting. And if you got it, you'd be happy. If you got more, you'd probably be happier. Not that people are like meals, but, you know, I think that if you know how many people there are, that you don't have to fix people you don't know, because you end up having to try to fix people you do know in time. You don't need that extra work. So let me cover the crowd. Kristen's here. Kristen's actually coming on this week, actually tomorrow with Rita. So that's going to be a great show. Dean is here. Dean's just most wonderful fellow. Me and Kelly have gotten to know him pretty well, and just a great guy, beautiful heart, and
Hmm.
you know, we're all building, growing together. And that's to I think a good point that Jill made, is this type of show and format allows people to know people one word at a time, one day at a time. And you can really get to know people really well before you have to do anything to meet them,
That's right.
because it's continuous, right? And now what, everybody knows each other, there's no surprises. I could meet anybody here for lunch. I'd be thrilled,
Yeah.
you know, just for that opportunity. And how many times could you say that with just anybody, or however you might meet them? Danny says, givers do need to learn when to stop giving, because takers need to learn when to stop taking. Well, it's your cue. You know, everybody is testing at a certain point. You know, what's the boundaries here? What's the challenges? What can I be comfortable doing?
Yeah.
And you have to be on alert too. And at the same time, I think to Jill's point, have a lot of fun. Don't overthink it, you know, and definitely don't judge early, because that, you know, you can start judging the book by its cover and miss a lot of the richness inside. So with that said, Kelly, pretty
I,
robust conversation.
yes, so many great things to take out of there. So I think it's interesting because as we, you know, grow, mature, learn, stretch, however you want to say it, I think our relationships or how we look at relationships definitely changes too. We evolve in some way. And to Danny's point about being a giver, you know, I refer to myself on an occasion as a recovered pleaser, people pleaser, because I wanted everybody to like me. But I think that's part of when we're young. We feel the need that like all of these people are supposed to be our friends. And we want people to like us because that means they're friends. And, you know, which kind of goes to what Jill's talking about with online. People think that, you know, some
Mhm.
people are friends and it's like, but are they? Do you really know this person if you're only interacted via a text message? Um, you don't really know who's behind the keyboard or what's happening. But to my first point, as we grow and mature, and knowing that, hey, I can't fix anybody. I can only fix myself and be responsible for my own actions, and not, we're not responsible for other people's happiness. We can't fix it. And in relationships, and I think, again, as we evolve through life, and I think we all go through those times, after high school and maybe in college in our early 20s, and we see how certain people, we grow in different directions. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It's just like this person, we just don't go together anymore, and we need to go separate ways. Relationships also serve a purpose. What is it? Season, reason, or lesson with people, and knowing that that's totally fine. This person doesn't have to be in your life forever, but being present in the moments, like Jill is saying, and having fun with it. If you have to overthink or force a relationship, and I can say this particularly in the dating world, Jill and I did used to have fantastic conversations about our dating lives, is you can't force anything. And just being yourself and going with it, because it's like, you're not trying to sell you and win something. Like, you want something to work. Like, I love the approach with Jill's pickleball dating, because it's something she loves and it's something that's important to her. So you immediately have something in common. So there's no forced conversation. I mean, you immediately have something you can talk about. So the relationship will naturally evolve either into a friendship or into something more. And either one is a win, or into nothing. Maybe it is just, I was just supposed to meet this person for an experience, and that's okay. But I think that transition in life where we realize that not everybody is with us forever is a difficult time. And I know so many youngsters that do go through this too with their friendships. And my mentee is an example. 2020 being out of school, and she now has been out of school this last year, almost the entire year. So she's at home. So her entire communication with the outside world is through a device. And I hear about relationships with people that these kids have never met in person, that they're all completely on the device. I can't personally relate to that, because our generation, certainly, which isn't that much older in the sense of we're all about having interpersonal connection and meeting in person, because you can write someone via email and or text. And it's to remember, you're reading a message and you're receiving it on your own perception, not by the person's intent on how they sent it. So if I'm craving to have this loving relationship, I'm perceiving everything as like, oh gosh, this guy is dreamy. Like, he's saying all the right things, but are they really saying all the right things, or is it just your perception of? So that's part of technology, in my opinion, that I feel sad for the youth, in the sense of they're not being taught about how to interact with people. And I do see that a lot with the youth program that I'm involved in here, is so many of the kids have issue with socializing because they don't know how to do it. They've only been socializing with a device. And I'm speaking mostly for at-risk youth that I work with here. So a lot of them don't ever leave home. And so trying to get socialized as a 16, 17-year-old it's a big deal. And you see like, wow, their relationships are completely different and based on perception through a device. I don't know, which to me is just sad, because I'm like, God, they're missing the excitement of, like Jill's saying, the fun of getting to know somebody new and having new experience and learning something about someone who's had a different life path or journey. And so I think it can go in so many different ways, obviously, but I think the evolution of relationship and how we perceive them over time is definitely part of the process in growing and stretching. What are your thoughts on that, Jill?
Well, it's funny because I used to do reason, season, lifetime. You know, when you said that, I was like, okay, this person's just for a reason. This person is just for a season. And maybe they're a lifetime friend in a relationship.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really good. And it's funny because going back to this pickleball, just because I play so much, a friend of mine used to tell me, I know all about you. I said, how do you know all about me? You're like a new friend. I don't even know you. He says, I watch how you play on the court. You're persistent. You don't stop. You go after the ball. You don't go like this, and that does tell in sports a lot about, and that's why I say, get off the coffee, go for a hike, see how people really are in the desert, or are they run into a snake? I have a friend of mine who ran into a snake we did together, and she jumps on my back. I said, what do you think I'm going to do? Protect you? And this is like one of my dearest friends. I said, of course I will, but it's a snake, So how do you react in that situation? And you see them without their guards, and I was thinking about the mental, the physical, the emotional, spiritual relationships. And the mental, the most important thing is communication. And I love it because I always play a game with my friends, and this gentleman that I'm dating. What are the 3 things most important to you? Because we're on different love languages. Maybe at that moment I want roses, but he, has a whole different view of that, and what he just wants to be together and doesn't want to socialize. So when you communicate, you open up that relationship to what are those 3 to 5 things that are most important, so that we can hear and then do something about, because that's I think the whole secret is to really, I was told one time that somebody, when they're talking, the other person already has a question ready to go before they even heard what they said.
Ugh.
And we all do that because we're excited about the conversation, but this way they hear what you're saying. These are important to me. Let's see how we can, maybe not to my 10th degree, but to your 7th degree, how we can make this work, whether that's business, romance, friendship, family, it doesn't matter. You must hear the person to have that good relationship. And that's one of the things for mental, is the communication. And then the intellectual part of it, talking on the same languages of what you're doing. And if you don't know, don't be afraid to say, I don't understand.
Yeah.
So that you can understand what they're talking about. Or if when I tell some people over my head, I say, well, that passed me, and tell me what you mean. Right. So sit down and listen to people is so huge in a relationship. So.
Yeah, and I think that's so valid. And to Kelly's point, there are so many dynamic changes taking place. There's always a double-edged sword. I think for kids today, there should be more alternative sites. If it's a fact that everybody's going to get stuck on machines, why not have a happy site, a learning site, a socializing in a more pleasant manner, more respectful. So, I think whoever can create those, I mean, if you look at Barbie and it went just totally nuts, it took in 150
it wasn't
and it's
the parents, the moms.
Yes.
Right up what the moms went to bring back their past and the relationship that they had with Barbie.
Yes.
Well, and I think that shows you that the past does come back again. They say what's old is always new again in time. And I think it's when you feel that, hey, this is what I need. And if I need it and want it and really deserve it also, which is a good caveat, I'm not going to settle for less, right? You're not going to go into a gas station, only fill up halfway and then hope you'll find another gas station.
Depending on
you do it. Yeah, well, so many other things, but I think that's the value of communication, but it's also body language.
Yes.
When I'm with somebody and their eyes roll when I say something, I got to say, what was that about?
Yeah.
Or if someone did something really unnatural or mean, I said, where did that? Is that you? Is that what I'm seeing now? Because the sooner the better. When you see something that just cuts the wrong way with you, or you see, I would never tolerate this, and you say, well, I don't know the person, they don't know me, but that's when everybody's eyes are fresh, everybody's ears are pretty clear, and don't have any skin in the game yet. right? So, it's better to measure twice and cut once. And at
Mhm.
least tell people, hey, this is where I just draw the line. I mean, I'll just tell you up front, I don't do whatever, and I do love doing these things. So it's not punitive. I once
Right.
had a store, a bunch of stores, and I had a consultant come in. He was actually from Boston University. He sat on the board, and I took him through all the stores, went down to Colorado Springs, and back then, every wall had, we prosecute shoplifters. There's so much fee for a bad check. It was all so scary. And he says, do you ever do any of this stuff? I said, no. He says, then take it down because you're scaring the good customers. And the thieves aren't going to look at your sign anyways. So the point is you know what signs you're putting out,
Mhm.
because if it's all about safety, protection, me, then that's a hot potato that's going to get dropped really quick. If it's, I think, understanding the moment and the situation you're in at the same time,
Mhm.
and you, just like this show, you decide, hey, I need to bring something up. You know, Conversations should be meaningful if you want to have meaningful relationships. So many people are trying to impress.
Ugh.
You know, they think if they tell you how much money they got or what school they went to or what their family, whatever it is, they're actually submissing you early,
Mhm.
right? Someone wants to take or grab the higher ground.
Right.
They want to say, because of this, I can do this, and you should be grateful. And that right alone is like, hey, if we're going in equal, why are we starting unequal?
Mhm.
And I think that's where you got to put things in your favor and other people. Here's the other thing: don't be a cynic, don't be a critic out of nature, right? If someone comes across as wonderful and great, hey, you move to this area. And what I think it is, acknowledgement and identification. Hey, you are so polite. I am so impressed, or you really picked a beautiful place to go to dinner tonight, or hey, when I'm playing pickleball with you, I mean, whatever it is, if it's true, if it's honest,
Yeah.
it's a disservice to everybody not to share it.
Yep.
And it goes the other way too. So let me say hello. Christy's here. Christy's just the greatest. Thank you for being here. I think we acknowledge Kristen. Building relationships seems so basic but essential.
Yes.
Like I say, here we go with, we did that. Kristen comes back with, yes, Kelly, relationship change and evolve constantly as we learn and grow. Don, you got it covered. Don't judge a book by its cover. Open it and think it over. And you can read many books at the same time.
Yeah.
So, while you're building relationships with somebody, you could be expanding relationships with somebody else.
Mhm.
It says have more fun with pickleball, and it'll be a little tickleball too. Dennis,
It's going on my app.
Oh, funny.
I was quite surprised, as she says, when revisited some of my past relationships to how commonalities remain the same via memories. I'm glad I chose to unbusy myself and reach out. I think Ashif makes an excellent point. Too many people are looking for new opportunities and not renewing and supporting existing or old opportunities.
Yeah.
People from your past, like Jill and Kelly, you bump into or you interact with, but that's by chance instead of always by purpose, or plan. And I think, just like anything else, if you've got great relationships, and especially LinkedIn, because now you can invite people to other people. It's like having a party and say, just come take a look. And no one's even going to know you or care about you that much initially if you don't want them to. And the
Mhm.
relationships we make here are friendly relationships, and they're quality relationships, because it doesn't get into finance or romance, and it shouldn't. It should just be, hey, we're here as people, individuals, equal in every way, from a standpoint of having a story, having a reason for being here, having a future, and it's the company you keep. People are always looking at materialism or, hey, I'm moving here. Well, if you're moving there, you're moving with what you already have here. And I think that's really the key. Gratitude, appreciation. Sometimes the best people in your life are right in front of you,
Hmm.
and whether you take them for granted or you don't acknowledge them. And to everybody's point, people change,
Yeah.
and they change both ways. You could have said, hey, that person was such an idiot. Somehow they found something or themselves, and now they turned it around. I mean, me and Kelly hear so many tragedy to triumph stories that if you would have met that person in their most tragic place, you would have run
Yeah.
if you if you were judgmental. But who now have arrived, and because of where they came from, they don't stop where they used to be. They just keep going. They want to outrace the wind at that point. And I think that's the possibilities. And another thing about relationships, no one's going to care more about you than you about yourself. And when people see that you are respected by yourself, that you just can't get enough of yourself. To Jill's point, I have plenty of conversations in the mirror with myself. Most of it's like, how could you do that? Or why didn't you do that? But most of it's like, boy, wasn't that fun? Wasn't that cool? You see a movie, why not take a minute of reflection? People meditate for hours over nothing, spend no time thinking about everything, that's just happening to them. And, then that's where acknowledgement of gratitude. I know Anne, every time we go to dinner with anybody, even if it's our daughter, she does a 3-paragraph thank you and acknowledges everything they cooked and what they did. And then they get 2 or 3 responses, and it just motivates people to say, people appreciate me. People appreciate my effort and my time. And very few people reach out and tell me that, even though I kind of feel they know it. But, why not put or the bow on once you've created that? So, Ashif, I think we covered that. Kristen comes back with, yes, active listening can be so difficult. I'm working on this personally. I'm a northerner who interrupts, and I hate that. Well, just knowing that is you're on your way, right? You have to accept and acknowledge. And then sharing is even better. We may all be of a different chapter, however, we may be reading the same book. Well, no one starts every book the same time. No one ends at the same time. No one needs it in different ways as someone else. But that's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of words, is you get to pick them as you need them and use them the way you can benefit more people. Dennis says, agree, have a pro-vision visitation, not just a convict. That's getting a little technical now for me, Dennis. We got to get back to roses are red. Good people don't need rules to live by. Bad people always find a way around them. He's got some really good, universal thoughts. Aaron says, sorry for delay, not a problem. Okay, Dennis says, agree, we need to listen more and talk less. That's why we have 2 ears and just 1 mouth. And Kristen says, that was my New Year's resolution. If I think a compliment, say it. So smart, Kristen. With that, Kelly, what's your thoughts? We're about more than halfway through. Time just flies.
So many things and all of that came because one of the points that stuck out to me that I think is so important to remind everybody, and Don, I know you and I have had this conversation before, is when people show you who they are, you need to believe them the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that you should cut them out and say no. I mean, I'll give another chance or opportunity, but I'm aware of when people show me who they are, believe them. And particularly in business. And I definitely am grateful I learned that lesson. I wish I would have learned it earlier. But I learned it nonetheless. And so I think that's so important to do. And body language, I could go on an entire episode on that because I am obsessed with it. I love it. I'm a huge fan of the behavior panel. I got into that during 2020 when they started doing it. It's for body language experts from around the world in different realms. So they focus on different things, and they'll watch a video of something, and it's usually something that is in pop culture, like for the oh gosh, I'm blanking on the guy's name. Anyways, some of the most basic, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle as an example. Well, I can't even believe I just said their names because I'm so bored with them. But but they'll break down their body language and say what's deceitful or deceptive, and they never say people are lying, or if it's a court case, they won't say somebody's guilty. They'll just talk about deceptive behavior. Um, and it's not always someone who looks down to the right is lying, or those basic things, because each person does have a different baseline, so there is more about it. And that was what I loved about interviewing people, is their body language, because you could tell immediately when someone is like so stressed. And I would always take a minute to be like, hey, let's take a sit back and let's just take a deep breath. We're just here to have a conversation. And when you go out of your way to make someone else feel comfortable, particularly in a interview situation, because there's certainly things that you're not allowed to ask. And I will tell you, people sometimes told me things that I was like, wow, I'm not sure I would have ever said that in an interview, but thank you for sharing. It makes people feel comfortable to converse with you, knowing that you're listening, and going back to that other part of active listening. I think that is so important. And to what Jill said earlier about, and I know I was this way when I was younger, particularly in business, because I wanted to show my value. Being a woman who was, pushed and pushed, wanting to go up the ladder, I had to be smarter than anyone else at the table. And so I would be calculating a response to what was happening so I could show my value. And I probably missed some very important aspects of the conversation, instead of sitting back and really observing and paying attention to all those things that aren't actually being said, but they're being said. And now I just find it fascinating. I'm fascinated by human behavior. I love people that come from different backgrounds and staying curious about them. So I don't know. I think that part is super cool. But that is about a relationship with yourself too, because when you're comfortable of just being you and absorbing the rest of the world around you, that's a beautiful thing. And we do take the time to exhale and be like, I'm just going to be present in this moment. And if we did that all the time, how wonderful that would be. And the other point I wanted to hit on as well was, when we talk about judgment, judging others or doing something, and I can't remember who said this. I'm not a New Year's resolution person, because I believe, like, if you need to change something in your life, change it. You don't need a date to do it. But someone said, pay attention to what you judge, because when you make a judgment, it has something to do with you, and reflect on it. And so at New Year's, it said for 30 days, pay attention to how often you judge, and you will be mind blown at how automatic that our brain judges things. But pay attention to what they are and how it impacts you, because it is you judging yourself. Ultimately, you don't know anything about that person. Maybe they're wearing mismatched socks because they had a special day at their kid's school and they were teacher's aide, and you were supposed to wear a pair of funky socks. You don't know the story. But why do you judge those things? And it's a fascinating exercise. And I do encourage anyone, if you're interested in doing it, do it. You will be astonished at how much that and if you have to be honest with yourself, though, of how much that we do judge, because it's just an automatic response, but that it is about you, and reflect on oh my gosh, why am I doing that? Why am I tearing this person down? Am I jealous of where they are? Anyway, so I just think that's really an interesting thing, and a good way to deepen the relationship with yourself. What are your thoughts, Jill?
I love it. I love what you're saying, Kelly. And I really believe in being a homeopathic practitioner, listening to people's stories, and everybody has one.
Yes.
And so you cannot judge at that moment where that person is in their life in relationships. You just have to come in the door with compassion and just again, listening to what they're saying. It's interesting. I was thinking as you were talking to, of course, going on to the next, how do I think relationships? And I just wanted to bring in business, you know, and business and somebody paying you for for your services and that relationship and what it looks like. And what I brought up my kids doing, when anybody gives them money for a service that they did, before they could cash that check, they had to, at the time, they had to write them a thank you note. Now it's more you text them, but I still think myself, every day I send out a letter of thank you to someone, a quick little card like thinking about you, love you, whatever that might be, that relationship to build. And we forget about gratitude. We are so grateful for the relationships we do have. And it's not just a moment, it takes time and years, like you and I, Kelly. And Don, you being a new relationship, how much fun. I get to learn and grow with you. And what's your story? And I just heard little bitty pieces of it. And how can we work together and collaborate and help each other and fill that piece of the puzzle? But how grateful that Kelly introduced me to you to be here today. Again, bringing in that gratitude in everything we do in our life, whether it is that relationship of partner, our business, or even your spiritual, to be thankful. I'm always thinking I have angels, and I'm always thanking my angels. Thank you for letting me hear that, and it makes life so much richer. Yes. So I want to let people know about, everybody has that story. Be have gratitude of where you are, and grateful that they're in your life. And the other thing that I always say is about walk your talk. Whatever it is in a relationship, if you're going to say it, do it. If you don't think you can do it, don't say it. It's not a big deal. But follow through on what we think that we can do if you say it out loud. And that's, again, an intention you talked about, Kelly. If it's an intention, let that relationship understand, I'm going to follow through on this, no matter what part of relationship it is.
And isn't that funny? And to interject here, Don, I apologize, is
good to go.
Those people, and we've all known them, who do say, like, I'm going to do this, or I am this. And then you kind of sit back and you go, your actions are complete 180 of what you just said. And continuously, like, you've proven the point more than one time. So this is now a habit. I always thought, man, if you put that energy towards something positive, what you could actually accomplish. And what are you doing for me by ultimately lying, because you have no intention of doing it, that it's a habit. But I'm fascinated by the behavior, whereas when I was younger, I'm sure it ticked me off with some relationships. But as I've gotten older and just learning about that, because it's like, well, the reason they did that has nothing to do with me. Like, it's their stuff, and they're projecting something within them, and it has absolutely nothing to do with me. But it is just fascinating. And I don't know the saying exactly, but something about, you are who you are when you do something, behind closed doors that nobody else sees. What you do that no one else sees is really who you are. And in those people, and I can't remember which one of you were saying this earlier, those people who do come out and right away are like, need to tell you how much money they make and how successful they are and how cool their brand new car is and how big their home is. That to me is such a wow, there's some insecurities that are flying out of your mouth for whatever reason. And because I've always thought, like, you don't walk up to someone and go, hey, Don, it's super nice to meet you. And I want you to know, like, I'm a really nice person. So lucky you. I mean, you don't tell someone they see who you are based on your actions. So just kind of go with what you're saying, Jill. I just find it fascinating when people are like that. And I see it so different at this stage in life, because it's like, man, I want to know the story behind what makes that person drive that way.
And instead of being that, though, Kelly, it's so important to know, like, my father lived with me for a couple years, almost 3 years. And when he was dying, people can only do what they can do. We all cannot judge in a relationship, whether that is family, how they react to that. And so I've learned, and I sat back in different relationships, even business, they can give their all, and this is all they have. You know, we want, and that's a bad word, is expect more, because expectation is always not that positive, you know, because someone only has so much to give in that relationship. And then you have to decide as that person, is that enough for you? Does that satisfy your needs enough? Or do I need to move on to somebody that's more like-minded towards me and has the same values and same goals in life? So I think that, you know, that story is important, where they're coming, how they can express themselves, what they have the ability to do in a situation, you know, and that goes back to the story. But I also want to share one quick fun thing. In my bathroom, every morning I have a sign that says, "I love you," you know, so I reinforce that. So, and it's in bright red, that I've got to see this, just because, okay, you know, take it from there. You know, what's that relationship going to be with myself first, as you both said?
Well, you know,
Love that.
any time you can supercharge yourself with any exercise in the morning or routine or tradition, it grounds you and it makes you stronger going into the day. I think to, you know, what Kelly's saying about when people tell you so much about themselves that you didn't ask for, what it really shows is, don't you trust me to see and hear what I, you know what I mean? You don't have to tell me like captions and then expect me to accept it so you can tell me more stuff, because relationships are give and take, you know, just like
Yeah.
almost everything. You take a step, I take a step, I take a step, you take a step, but nobody's going to take two steps. And when someone just makes you or creates that situation, that's a red flag. The other thing that you know, was brought up by Jill was business relationships, right? And in certain business relationships, someone's on top and someone's on the bottom, right? You're either the banker or the person looking for the loan or to continue it. You're either the employee or the boss, if that's how it's separated. And you got to respond in that way. You know what it takes to get taken out. You've seen other
Mhm.
people in businesses or whatever, and all of a sudden they forget where they are and who they're with, and they blow themselves up. Now that's you know, an accommodation that's not very comfortable, but at least to the point of expectation, you know, hey, that's the way they run things around here, and if you want to fit in, you better run with them that way. The other thing, I think, to Jill's point, is people in your life have different relationships with you, because me and my wife took care of my mother the last 2 years. And it went from when I was born to her being my mother to her being a child at the end. And it was all smile, her intention, that made her respectful no matter what the situation. And you know, all you can expect from people is do all you can as when you can, and that's all you can do. And then here's one more thing that I think is very vital: the goodwill that people have established. I remember my mother was having challenges, and I said, "Hey, kids, every Sunday we're going to meet here for dinner, and it's going to be about grandma, right? And whether you want to or don't want to, remember how much she's given you, how much she's thought of you. Now this is her time." And I said, another thing, I want you to see how I'm taking care of her, because that's how I want you to take care of me, right?
Take
You're going to
notes.
be eating the sandwich one day, you know, where I am with taking care of the top and the bottom. And, you know, it makes things beautiful that most people would chore. I remember during that time, everybody's like, oh, you never travel, you can never go out, because we had to be there all the time just to make sure she was okay. And I said to everybody, how much would you give to have your mother back for one more day,
No
right?
question.
You know, and I've got that. And one day I won't have that. And I don't want to go back and think, oh, I should have, because shoulda, coulda, woulda is just poor excuses for, okay, what are you doing now then? Right? If you
Yeah.
admit you overlooked something or you weren't strong enough. Plus, the giving is the getting. You know, the people always want an advantage. that are always measuring, always keeping score. Well, I paid for dinner was $30. You're only paying for dinner, it's 24. It's like, well, then you didn't even enjoy the dinner with me if you were focused on the takeaway is you spent $6 more. And you can't have relationships when people are majoring in, it's like you want someone who's expansive, someone who's willing. And here's the other thing about judgment. I usually, just like baseball, give people 3 chances.
Yeah.
As long as it's not dramatic or awful. I'd say first time they don't know any better. They don't know me. What could I expect? Second is now you know me, what can I expect? And the third time I can't deal with it because even on interviews, some people I could interview and in 15 seconds, they were so honest. They were so clear and easy to identify with. I'd give them a job. There were people I called back 5 times and there was something, I just can't figure this out. It just doesn't make sense. How's a person with $10 million gonna be working in the warehouse? Something's wrong here. Or why? And it just didn't make sense. And people don't trust people to trust them.
Yeah.
They create the situation they're hoping to avoid.
Yeah.
Because, and a lot of people, one more caveat. In relationships, they're usually based on prior relationships. How you think of somebody is how you had or thought of someone else. Because you're sensitive. Just like if you bought a Ford, pretty soon every car looks like a Ford. Because you got one and you were focused on one and now you see all these other things. And no one should be responsible for something they weren't part of, weren't there for, had nothing to do with it. Because for the same token, if you had just great relationships with people, you shouldn't give the new person that credit yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you need to earn it. I would never want to be with someone who cheated on anything, right? And did it, and actually worse, enjoyed it. People like, do you know how much I ripped that guy off for? I sold my car for so much more he didn't know. That is so sick in a way, but it's there. And that's the key thing. Some will, some won't. So what? With that said, here's Danny. We'll come back for final thoughts and move so quick. But remember them broadcasting, sharing list of things about themselves, a reflection on them. It might be driven by insecurity or fear, but dismissing out of hand can mean that you miss out on a great relationship.
Yeah.
And some people just, you owe it to yourself and them to say, by the way, I'm kind of curious. See, if you already say judgment first, it's all over.
Mm-hmm.
What you just did showed me you're this kind of person. It's like either you're going to get a justification, defense, or I don't want to hear this. But it's like, I'm curious. I didn't understand what were you trying to say here, or what were you hoping I would take from what you just said, and give somebody a chance. I didn't realize I said that. I didn't mean it that way. But, if you're not standing up for yourself, who will, right? If you're not comfortable, how are you going to get comfortable? And every time you give somebody a pass, you give them another opening. And then they can always say, well, you never said anything about it. You never popcorn, and I keep buying it. We keep eating it and you're not saying anything. It's about responsibility and accountability in every relationship you have. And I would assume more responsibility. Always try to be the better person, because it's easier for me to do than figure out where is halfway. And now I owe somebody something and they owe me. It's like, that's too, and not in a long-term relationship. Transactional, it's to be expected. So Helen's here. Haven't seen Helen in a while. Thanks so much. I was busy preserving veggies. Well, that's great. Nothing like relationships with food. We can talk about that for another hour. So Jill, Jill, what's your thoughts now after almost an hour of this? And we sure covered a lot of ground. You girls were just so fabulous with relationships and how it could apply to so many different things and people. Just want to hear your thoughts now.
Well, I think just the 3 of us, the relationships we've made in the last week, 2 weeks, is very fun. So be open no matter where you go and whoever you meet. Last night I was eating dinner and I met somebody that says, can I be on your board of your nonprofit? You don't know. So keep yourself open for the opportunity of an amazing relationship.
Yes, so agree.
So profound. Kelly?
Yeah, I just, there were so many things in that last bit that you said, but I know we need to wrap up. I think, the relationship part, when you were talking about your mother, I of course feel at this stage in my life, and I have such a different view on so many things as I've, grown. I don't want to say necessarily matured, because some people would probably argue that I have not. um, is being with someone who is, I lost a dear friend nearly 2 years ago now, and he was in the hospital for 2 weeks. And I felt like, and as sad as I was, because we knew, I mean, we didn't think it was going to be as fast as it was, but being able to spend that time with him in that moment and just really be present, because it reiterates the point I think that we've all made during this conversation, is meeting people where they're at, not where, like Jill said, I think earlier, where your expectation is of where people should be. That you need to drop, because you just need to meeting people where they're at is such a gift, and such an eye opener for yourself, to be like, wow, I had no idea. But the privilege when someone allows you into their life and to share themselves with you, go back to gratitude. It's a privilege, it's an honor, it's a gift. And just appreciating those moments and being present. And I'm sure we could go on and on, Lord knows I could, about all of this, but I'm so grateful for the relationships. Like, Dawn, you and I have a great relationship. I'm so blessed to have you in my life. And Jill is a perfect example of a relationship that, we hadn't seen each other in, I don't know, at least 6 years is what we had figured. But it was like no time had passed. It wasn't like, where have you been for 6 years and how come you haven't reached out? It's just like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. Our paths have crossed again. And let's stay present in this and see where this goes. Like, it's so beautiful how relationships, do intertwine over time. And so I guess ultimately just be present. And as we go to sign out, before I turn it over to you, Dawn, I will end as I always do to everyone. Please go out and shine so bright that others can't help but shine too.
Love
Well,
it.
that's beautiful on Jill's part, Kelly's part. And, when you start with beauty, every relationship starts with a tailwind. When you show up, and it's not just appearance. Well, I say the most beautiful woman in the world was my grandmother at 97 when I was with her. I still saw that glow. I still saw that excitement, right? And I see 20-year-old kids who they're blank eyes and not thinking about the world or beauty in it. And you need to bring to the table what you want to participate in. I always bring a nice salad to everything, because not everybody eats veggies, and I know I can make a meal out of it. So while I'm doing it for them, I'm guaranteeing I'm going to eat something I like, maybe something else. But there's also, because we had this family barbecue the other day, a lot of people came in from out of town, there was a lot of food, and some things went faster than others. And I remember somebody was really into salmon burgers. I remember there was one left, and I could have ate it, but I thought of them. And I just said, hey, Jill, and it happened to be another, we got one more salmon burger. Thank you so much. I'm thinking, I'm so glad I thought of her and the salmon burger. And I ended up having something else anyways. But it was the point where you come in a better place than most people come for you. Right? And then you can create that in them, because you're saying, I'm starting out, I'm a giver. Here's what I brought to the table. If you're going on a walk, wouldn't it be cool if you brought a couple cold drinks with you and shared it? I just bought two Gatorades, one's for you, one's for me. And what it does is, I thought about you before I even met you. I wanted to make you comfortable before I even knew what it was that it was, but a word, a drink, a kind word, and the more you can do and the less you need to do it and be happy doing it is where you want to arrive at. Too many people accumulate, and they're never using what they already built. They're just going out and getting more versus sharing. So anyways, relationships essential to everything everybody does with everything and everybody. And your relationship with yourself, which we discussed at the beginning, is essential. So while you're waiting to get something you don't have, work with what you do have. And I think that's a good start for a day. So thank you again, audience. I can't thank you enough. The comments have been really good. And the relationships we're having here are getting stronger, deeper, and more empowering. And that's why we're the Hour of Empower. So with that said, love you all. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk again tomorrow. And tomorrow's going to be Kristen and Rita. Stay tuned. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.